We're talking about the later draft picks that I like and Trent Baalke. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, for yet another edition of Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Also inviting you to subscribe for free to our YouTube page, Locked On Jaguars, and make sure wherever you get your podcast that you listen to audio-wise, you tap in every single day to make sure you don't miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/locked on today to get started. I'm glad y'all starting here with me, especially my everydayers. What is going on? Glad you have decided to kick it with us here today. Also, to any new listeners, we welcome you, and hopefully we can convince you to become an everydayer as well. This is what we're going to talk about today. I talked about some draft picks, the guys that I thought would make a huge immediate impact. I'm going to bring up three more that I think will definitely have a role on this team. The ones that I really, really like. So there's 13 picks, right? There's 10 day three guys. By average, maybe half of them will be impact players between year one and year two, right? But by Trent Baalke's average, who we'll discuss a little bit today too, like how it's come full circle with him. Some of these guys probably won't be people that you really ever remember other than them getting picked. It's rumored that Baalke, it's not even a rumor, he said he's tried to trade up 15 or 16 times and he just couldn't do it. So by trying to trade up 15 or 16 times, either he's lucky because the guys that he was trying to trade up for ended up falling to him anyway, or he was unlucky and he ended up with a bunch of guys that he really was trying to target somebody else. So we'll discuss that at length. We'll talk about these three players that I really, really like, and also mention some guys when Trent Baalke says they're not done. Who could they possibly go get, and what would it look like if they go get them? I'm going to end this narrative too about who a bad teammate, what a bad. I think fans really, really need to stop that. And fans can do what they want to do, but this whole somebody's a bad teammate, and it's specifically I'm talking about Yannick Ngakoue. Yannick Ngakoue was not a bad teammate. There's not one person that you can go. Well, maybe there's one person that I know of that doesn't like him, but that person was considered a bad teammate by a lot of people when they were here, and he left before Yannick did. So this whole because somebody had a dispute for money does not make them a bad teammate. That makes them a disgruntled employee. That's not. Guys in the locker room understand when dudes want to get paid way more than you think they do. They are rooting for their teammates to get money. So we'll discuss that a little bit, and then how this franchise has come full circle, and they're Trent Baalke dependent. I am not of the thinking that just because we have Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence that everything's all right. I think that makes everything easier, and I think it should indicate that the future is bright. But Trent Baalke is a very, very important figure in the future of this team and all of this stuff. And it's just come full circle that a lot of people just, I don't know if it's fandom or I don't know if it's just the lack of awareness, but they say doesn't matter. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth. So we'll discuss all of that stuff. But first, I want to talk about some of the players I like. And it's not going to be in the order that they were picked. It's in the order that they caught my eye a little bit here. I like them because of their ability, and I like them because of what they represent and what they bring. And then they go against something that Trent Baalke usually loves so much. So it seems like either Doug Peterson or possibly an area scout or two told Trent to take some chances on some guys that he probably and normally would not have signed up for, because Trent Baalke has been known as a traits guy. Everyone talks about traits, length and speed. Well, there's some guys that just don't fit that, and one of them I want to talk about is Parker Washington, the wide receiver who I think has the most clearly defined role of any of these rookies that were chosen after round 3, and that is that he automatically comes in as, I believe, a dude is going to challenge for the 4th receiver spot. I really believe they have a plan for him. I think they believe they needed a high level, large body of work from a big school receiver and prospect to work behind the group that they already have, that can give you a little bit of everything all of those dudes give. Now he's small, and you have to say that with a grain of salt because he's short. He ain't small. He's built like a tank. He actually has the size of a running back. He's 5'10", but he goes 210 pounds. And he plays like a guy who goes 210 pounds, not lengthy and not super, super fast and explosive, but athletic. You can be athletic without being fast. So um, I'm looking forward to it. Doug Peterson talked about it. I heard what he said when he was on the podium, and he really was looking forward to him getting behind Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and absolutely learning as much as he can from those guys. If there is a bit of a if there's a wishful upside to Parker Washington, it's going to be Doug Baldwin for me. That's the kind of player, that toughness and that unique ability to run after the catch. That's what I think he actually will bring to the table. Ventrell Miller, another guy that does not fall under that traits category because he's an old school. Ventrell Miller is what you really consider an old school two down linebacker, right? But I think he can also play on 3rd down, and I think he can play special teams. He's not big, but I was talking to Brandon Olson about him not too long ago, and Brandon said that, like, next to Brandon Spikes, like, he's like one of the most favorite players that he's ever seen at the linebacker position. And that's because he was smart and he was intelligent. It sounds like you're talking about a coach on the field. Well, that's what an old school linebacker is. He storms gaps. He's always around the ball. He has a built-in navigational system, sort of like a Micah McFadden, who was chosen last year by the Giants out of Indiana. Just a smart, heady Jack Sanborn was that same kind of player. Who ended up being an undrafted free agent, who was a tackling machine for the Chicago Bears. So these are non-traditional Trent Baalke type selections that I believe have a chance to bring some value. Special teams first for Ventrell, and then eventually challenging for that 4th inside linebacker spot. Especially, he's the kind of dude. Now I'm gonna warn you something. He's the kind of guy that if he has to play because of injuries, good luck getting your job back, because he's just going to do a whole bunch of things right, and you're gonna have to go above and beyond and really take advantage of any flaws that you think he might have. And the last one is Tyler Lacey, 6'4", 279. Not really that edgy, bendy edge rusher type, but I think he is a traditional big end. And this is another one. This is a Ray McDonald type pick who Trent Baalke knew and very well from, of course, his days in San Francisco. So I'm a firm believer in. I think these scouts probably stood up on the table and were, look, man, these guys can really play, and they can really get it in. And because you have these extra picks, you can take chances on guys that have a large body of work and can really help you. So Lacey has a chance to be a rotational player, a big end player, a developmental player. He has really strong hands. He's really strong, violent hands, and a lot of production too. You notice the phrase for the day is body of work. They really took productive guys from guys who were super productive in college. All right, so before we get into Trent Baalke and how dependent in full circle has come from everybody calling a guy a clown to now really having to depend on him to make sure you go out and get talent, I'm going to talk about some guys you could add in free agency. Trent Baalke has mentioned that this team is not done, and we're not done here, because I'm going to give all of that to you in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I want to talk to you about FanDuel. Today's show is sponsored by FanDuel. Make a fast break for FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. That's right. If your bet doesn't win. And right now, boy, Phoenix is down 2 games and they don't look like they got anything beyond KD, an older KD and Devin Booker, so they might be in trouble. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sports book. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, running down here on Locked On Jaguars. Couple of days after draft day, still talking about the NFL draft and all of the things that came along with it. And what comes along with it is moving along to the next phase. So I saw something online today when folks were talking about the possibility of Yannick Ngakoue returning back to Jacksonville as a free agent. First of all, what would he give you on the field? He give you a dude that, since he's been in the league, is in the top 5 in pressures, top 5 in sacks, and top 5 in causing turnovers and strips. So what does that cost? Well, it's between them to work it out. You as fans should just want a guy like that on your team. And I saw some people saying bad teammate going to mess up the locker room. That is not true. And I'm not taking up for him because he was always a nice kid to me, and we've always had an open line of communication, even when he left. I'm just telling you, it's not true. And I have no idea why anybody thinks it's anything other than that, and where they get this information from that somehow this dude's a bad teammate because he had a dispute with management over his value. That doesn't make you a bad teammate. What makes you a bad teammate to your teammates, that's the thing that people are leaving out. In order to be a bad teammate, your teammates have to think you're a bad teammate. And nobody ever thought that Jan was. He had 1 or 2 guys he didn't get along with, but y'all didn't like them either. So, calling someone a bad teammate because they wanted more money and they thought that their value, they gambled on themselves, and then they still didn't get what they wanted. You can talk all day about the language, the way that he left, which I think Jan probably has some regrets and how he handled it. But that doesn't make him a bad teammate, and that's something that I ain't gonna say fans gonna fan, but people say stuff like that, man, and I have no idea where it comes from at all, at all. Wanting more money is not being a bad. Is Calais a bad person because he took Atlanta's offer over Jacksonville? That just doesn't make any sense. Guys hold out all the time, and when they get their money, they come in camp, and their teammates cheer them for getting paid. Right? When folks say stuff like that, it tells me they have no idea how an NFL locker room works. None whatsoever. The players are a fraternity. They want each other to get paid. They do. I mean, even if it's for selfish reasons, they want each other to get paid. Is Buda Baker a bad teammate because he wants out of Arizona? But y'all want to go get him, but he wants to leave Arizona. Does that make him a bad teammate? But everybody wants everybody else's players that want to leave their team, but they don't want anybody back that at one point wanted to leave theirs. It absolutely makes no sense. And I'm personally not going to be one, other than explaining it this one time on the podcast, to be entertaining that stuff on social media, because it's just not true. I think both of those players add a lot of value to this team. I think the Buda Baker move is a little bit less likely. That doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's a little bit less likely. I think the time to do that was to give up a bunch of draft picks in this draft, the ones you couldn't trade up off of, the ones that you had so many. This was the draft for you to put a package together and do something like that if you're going to do it. I wouldn't trade anything for next year or future picks because, quite honestly, those drafts will be stocked with more talent, and it just doesn't make any sense to trade future picks for anybody. Not when there's people out there on the free agent market that you can get. So, is there some Wherever there's smoke, there's fire. They say, yeah, there's smoke and there's fire about the possibility of adding Jan back to this team as a situational pass rusher. Guys get into different positions. This is like 7 years now in the league. So guys start thinking differently, especially when a team has a great quarterback and they're a playoff team. People are going to deal with this franchise way differently than they dealt with this franchise if they were here before. And the Jaguars were perpetual losers outside of one season. The one thing about making the playoffs and having a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence and having a coach like Doug Peterson that have won Super Bowls is you have a certain amount of credibility where people are going to deal with you differently. You don't believe it? Just live life long enough to see how people deal with you differently when you had success as opposed to when you struggled. Guys wanted to win, and guys wanted to, if we're going to lose, you're going to pay me for playing hard while you're incompetent trying to figure all the rest of this stuff out. I'm going to at least get paid. That's just the way the NFL works. And so now people are, this is now a situation where while guys won't take discounts, they will look at this situation a lot differently. Ain't no more $50 million here. That's not what this is for a free agent. But it is a championship, especially for a person that's gotten paid $50 million over the last 3 years or close to it, that are very frugal with their money. Now it's time to win. Now it's time to win. Plus, people love this city. Believe it or not, if fans don't like them or whatever, I've not heard one person who has ever left here. Now, this is big, all right? Because now I'm really, this is where I'm really, really talking to Jacksonville. And I've always told you, I'm a bigger fan of Jacksonville than I am of the Jaguars. And I know some people might not agree with that, but you got to understand, I've been a Jacksonvillian. I've been a Duvalian for 54 years, okay? So I've never heard one player who left here who didn't like the city and the people, ever. So while we're all criticizing folks and saying stuff about folks, understand their beef was with the people that no longer work in the building for the most part. It's not with you. It's not with the dude that's on his way to work this morning that's eating a steak in a sack at one of the places. It's not the guy who's sitting at Waffle House right now. It's not the construction workers. It's not the firemen and the teachers. They have no problem with the people. In fact, they love this city, especially when they're the type of people that be chasing clout like that and wanting to be in South Beach all on, taking pictures on Instagram. No, these people don't have a problem with Jacksonville, man. They love Jacksonville. They love the fans and they love the people. If they had a problem, they just had a problem with people in the organization, and most of them aren't here anymore. So we gotta chill on some of that stuff and not hustle backwards and make sure that we understand. Have some football self-esteem. Have not on football, have some city self-esteem about yourself. And understand people love this city and people love you got people that have never been to Jacksonville sitting on national TV every day screaming Duval. You ain't gonna believe you're great until you believe it. Nobody else is gonna tell you. You just gotta watch how people treat you. And right now, because of Doug Peterson, because of Trevor Lawrence, because of the success that they saw and they anticipate that's going to keep happening in the future, this might be a destination for people, even people who've been here before, to come and check it out. All right, I want y'all to make sure y'all check out draft coverage, continuing draft coverage, and team building coverage for the rest of this week. I'll mention other people. I've mentioned 6 guys that I love in the draft. They had 13. I'm gonna pick one hopeful. I'm gonna talk about them all tomorrow, but I'm gonna talk about one hopeful, one guy that doesn't have a clear path the way that I believe the guys I mentioned yesterday and today have a clear path to being on the field and being here long term. I want to talk about somebody in particular first, though. Make sure you make that your second listen and get in on all of that stuff on tomorrow. Now, I do want to talk about Trent Baalke, the Jaguars general manager. He's come full circle, hasn't he? Isn't it amazing that Trent Baalke is the person that everybody around here is dependent on to get talent for this team? We'll discuss all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, running it down here on the third and final segment of Locked On Jaguars. We're coming full circle with Trent Baalke, man. Trent Baalke, the GM of the Jaguars, went from being despised. Folks, when Urban Meyer was hired here. Yeah, I'm bringing it up. They wanted Balky gone, and there was a process where they didn't know he'd stay or what his role was. And when they found out Trent Balky was going to be here, fans went crazy. Like, I don't want him. I don't want him. And then here come the clown outfits, the whole outfit of the clowns, and it caught some traction, obviously, because Trent has a clown on his desk as a reminder of when everybody wanted to fire him. You can say what you want to say about Trent, but Trent will go have a drink at Lemon Bar. Trent will chill. Trent will hang out. Trent will be seen in the streets. Trent can dress, by the way. I'm gonna tell you now, he might be the best dressed GM we've ever had. I'll give him that credit. All right. Smooth suits. Smooth suit game is off the chain, even when he's on the sideline. He's got his little outfits on with his little hoodies and all of that stuff. So, you notice I say the word little, that's a barbershop thing. When you're trying to give somebody credit, but you don't want to sound like you're sack chasing. So we want guys to get sacks, but not like that, right? But the thing is he's come full circle. He has come full circle, and he's kind of earned a lot of respect from a lot of people because of how he handled it. He didn't break, he didn't buckle, he didn't start feeling sorry for himself. He kept his head down, but he kept his chin up and he kept doing his job. And he looked you in the eye and he smiled every day, and he relied on his 30 some odd years experience of doing his job. Now it's still a lot to be determined. It's still a lot left to be determined whether or not he's actually done his job well, because having a great coach and a great quarterback like the two that are here can mask some things, right? But you can't run and you can't hide. And eventually it's going to be, how good of a job has he done? It's going to be over a period of time where you look back and you look at all the moves he made and the ones that he didn't. You look at the picks that he chose and the ones that he didn't. And you're going to determine whether or not he's had a good job or not. But what's come full circle, and the irony is this: the person that these folks wanted to run out of here, along with Urban Meyer, the person that these folks wanted out of here. They even called him Littlefinger at one point. Like, they thought he was slick and cunning. I think I did too, if I look back at my podcast, right? The irony is that it's come full circle, and really, whether you want to admit it or not, and some people don't, because all they talk about is Trevor, and all they talk about is Doug Peterson, and said nothing else matters. That is not true. Nothing else might matter if you want to win your division, and nothing else might matter if you want to be one of the top 8 teams in the league. But if you're trying to win a championship, that is a lie. All of this stuff matters. Everything, especially who the guy is making choices and picks, and what his direction for the team is going to be, and how much he listens to everyone. And the more success they have, how much he doesn't listen to people. Because you can best believe that if anything he goes his way that he wants, that he wanted that other people didn't, he's going to use that to strengthen his grip and hold on the franchise. It's just that we're a year and a half away from folks wanting to run him out of town. There's video of him leaving the stadium on game day and people telling him, "You suck at your job. You suck." And he just look at him and keep walking. I would never be the guy to tell somebody like that in person and do that to him. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but I know fans do it. People have said rude things to me before until they see me in person, and then they kind of say rude things and say they were joking. But I get it. But he has faced so much more scrutiny than anyone else. He's had a more public face than any GM that I can recall. And he's dealt with it, and he looked you right in the eye. And if he is able to get the Jaguars eventually to a Super Bowl, it might be one of the greatest turnarounds for the reputation of a GM that I've ever seen. And it'll happen right here in your face. So Trent Baalke, he's come full circle, where the Jacksonville Jaguar fan base is totally dependent on Trent Baalke in order for them to win. So a quick recap: can he work his magic as we go backwards in order? Can he work his magic and make sure he puts his touches on the free agency market and can get a veteran in here? By the way, anybody talking about character, I saw somebody say, compare Yannick to Frank Clark. I want you to go Google Frank Clark and come back and tell me who the better teammate would be. Google him, and I'm not knocking him, because if they get him, I'd like that too, because it's about football. But just Google Frank Clark and then get back to me when you talk about what type of people are uh, on the job and away from the job. Okay, because the same people that said Yannick was a bad guy, they say, well, we'll take Frank Clark. So I just want you to pay attention and really understand what you're saying and what you're hoping for when you look at these players. That what moves can be made along with, I think he'll be measured a lot by the productivity of not only those guys that he chose in the first three picks, but a couple of the players that I mentioned. I mentioned Antonio Johnson, who was a fifth round pick. I think Antonio Johnson was a great value. I think he is automatically in the two deep at safety. I think Parker Washington is in the two deep. I think Ventrell Miller has a shot to win a spot. I think it's going to come down to him and Shaq Quarterman, who is a native of the First Coast, but who is also in the final year of his contract. So we'll see. And then Tyler Lacey, can he be that developmental defensive lineman? Maybe not a star, or maybe he will be, or maybe he's a guy who develops and turns out to be a lot better than anybody is projecting. I'm going to project that you're going to join me here again tomorrow on Locked On Jaguars, because that's what we do here, because it's your team every day. We appreciate our everydayers. And for all of you for making us your first listen. Y'all take care of each other, man. Until tomorrow. Thank you for joining me again on Locked On Jaguars.